Hey, Exes. Today's guest is a pinch me moment for sure. Dr. Neeta Bhushan is joining me in the podcast today. Dr. Neeta Bhushan, thank you so much for joining the Ex Wives Lounge and taking the time for this conversation today and connecting.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, your story is something that really caught me on a deep level. It's very inspirational from an abusive marriage to being orphaned at a young age. Um, I definitely think you're the perfect person to show resilience.
Mm.
Is this the reason, or can I assume this is the reason why you created the book That Sucked Now What?
Yes, actually. There were so many layered reasons because my very first book, came out in 2016 and it was like a leadership book and but it was also kind of the beginnings of really sharing my voice with the world. And I think that when you've had so much trauma and loss in your life, and people started telling me to write a book even as a teenager. I lost my mom when I was 16. I lost my brother, a year tragically of an asthma attack. And he was a year and a half younger than me. And then, less than 2 years later, my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer and then died 9 months to the date. And so, under 19, I've had these major losses. So people would always tell me, oh, when you grow up, you're going to write a book.
Mhm.
And I'm like, no, I just didn't want the attention around me because there was so much of that and just pity and sympathy that I kind of like got into my 20s wanting to, prove everyone wrong that, okay, I'm not just like this charity case. And it kind of like swung the other way because I felt like I was just like, all right, I'm going to prove everyone. And of course, I was raised by tiger parents. So my Indian Filipino heritage, and bless my parents, they instilled a few things, I guess, right, because I didn't really grieve or cope in the ways, or my coping mechanism was the overworking and the overachieving. And I tried to shove everything kind of under a rug in a closet. I just wanted to be normal. I was already a third culture kid. And for folks who don't know what third culture means, it's like you don't fit in one, on the Indian side, you don't fit on the Filipino side, and then you're American, and you're either too much of this or not enough of this, and you just don't belong, and you're kind of a chameleon. And so during the height of these traumatic events, I, was just in this place of, okay, one day, I'm going to be out of this dark cloud. Well, one day kind of also had me neglect my own like relationships in many ways, my relationship with myself, my relationship with men. I was in overlapped relationships, like how they're either going on for too long,
Yes.
and because you have this really big abandonment wound, you don't want to be the one to break it off, even though they're probably not good for you. They're emotionally unavailable, but being with them is better than being alone.
Mhm.
And so this pattern kind of, emerged and got really deep into my 20s, while on the professional side of things, yeah, was I a straight A student? Yes. Was I doing all of the clubs and all of the things and the dance and the, president of this association and that thing and research and all of the things? Yeah, that was easy to me because I would then numb what was going on internally,
Right.
right? Until it would catch up to me when I would, of course, get married. And of course, I fell in love in dental school and got swept off my feet. It was like your typical, looking back now, very codependent, that narcissistic codependent. Like, I want to be seen, I want to be loved, I want to be chosen. I want to be
Yes.
chosen. And
Yes.
that's how things were, right? You were
Yes.
chosen. The guy did the sweet talking, like typical high school days and all of those things. But think about it, overlap time periods where one would start, the other one would fizzle out. And I never had time to myself ever since I was a teenager,
Mhm.
meaning like being single. So I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what any of that was. And fast forward, I get into a very, very toxic relationship that would, really help me learn what self-love actually is and really advocating for yourself. Because before that, I just thought, serving others was a form of happiness, that everything came from, okay, I have to be the good girl.
Mm.
People already think, like I'm not going to make it in the world. So like I have to overcompensate, and I overcompensated in very many areas of my life until I share this in my book, That Sucked Now What?
Mm.
It's in the very first few pages where December 31st, which is New Year's Eve, right? Everyone's going out and celebrating. And I was crouched down in the corner in fetal position of my supposed fairy tale life, which
Right.
really was kind of on the outside, but on the inside, I was completely crumbling and I was scared for my life.
Mhm.
And it was that day that I realized that was going to be the last day that he would struck his hand on my face. And so I know trigger warning for a lot of people, but um and I remember there's a mirror in my bedroom, and I'm just looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, like, how did I get here?
Yeah.
How did I get here after all of these years? And I felt so sorry for myself. I was living a lie. Being Filipino and Indian, you don't really talk about, domestic violence. You don't talk about toxicity. You actually don't even know, because as a professional woman, I was also a cosmetic dentist. I had my own practice at the time. I was not even 30, like all of these things, right? Going, super excelling really well in life. But then here, your personal life is in shambles in every way.
Right.
And then, and so this was kind of this like breaking point and this opening to say, okay, Neeta, you got you.
Yes.
And that's when I said three words that would forever change the trajectory of my life. And this is for anybody who's watching or listening to this. I need help.
Mhm.
And that was it.
Mhm.
And that was it. And that's when I said it out loud, when I voiced, I feel like a lot of times with our emotions, we suppress them. And I was so good at suppressing for a really long time. I was a master at it. I think I should have been a gold medal Olympian in that suppression.
Yes.
But that night, December 31st, I let it all out. I mean, I was wailing and crying, and it was probably decades of deep grief that was like finally just coming out of, like, just uncontrollably, dry heaving and wailing. And that part was like, oh, okay, yeah, you're ready to leave. And that night, I mean, God bless my girlfriend who was actually with me. And she's like, you're not coming back here. She helped me pack. And literally, that was the last day that I would be in that home. And then I would be
Wow.
standing before a judge, literally.
So, do you
Um,
feel like that situation, that marriage, that man you chose was a reflection on how you felt about yourself? That it was a complete internal disconnect from who Nita was as a person. And on the 31st, that was the time for a rebirth. And I always say this when women go through this transformation stage of the realization that I don't know who I am when I look at myself in the mirror. I can't even tell you who I am because I'm so broken and I'm an empty shell. Was that the day that you just felt like a complete rebirth? And then from then on, you made the conscious decision to reconnect to who Nita is and
mhm.
not feel guilty, not feel sorry, and become kind of a recovering people pleaser, so to speak.
Oh my gosh. There were like, I look back now, and of course, I used to speak on stages about this. I started a nonprofit kind of shortly after,
Right.
probably in my catharsis of healing, to support other women in these types of situations, because you do feel that low
Hmm.
shame, the lowest emotion on the consciousness scale, which is shame and guilt. You
Right.
feel shame, like, I'm so smart. I did all of these things. Like, how could I ignore all of the red flags? Oh, my girlfriends, some of them stopped talking to me.
Hmm.
My family hated this man. And just you just see all of the things, right?
Hmm.
But I think for me, it was a slow death. It was a
Hmm.
slow death of this dream that I had of this, the fairy tale wedding, the
Yes.
fact that I thought the ghosts of my parents were just watching me, as my angels,
Hmm.
and you wanted this dream to work so bad. You're like, oh, not another thing, not another tragedy, not another thing. But you felt like I felt it in my bones. Like, this is not normal.
Hmm.
This is not the way a relationship is supposed to be, where you're on eggshells. And
Right.
I remember literally that day was the day that, yes, I was reclaiming me.
Hmm.
I mean, of course, there was a lot of fears. There were so many things. Again, I had to file. I went to the police department. I did all of these things, filed, the restraining order, went
Right.
and had to get some pretty real stuff. Had to get a lawyer, had to do all of these things, and then it didn't get easier in that very first month. It actually got pretty tough and even more toxic if you ever leave somebody that would never think that you are going to leave.
Yes.
And so I think for the women in this room, you probably understand what I'm talking about. It can get worse before it gets better. And
Right.
I'm just really grateful that in my situation, there were so many people sharing, like, you are so lucky you are, out.
Yes. You made it
Um,
out alive. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
let's talk about the transparency of situations like that and the facts. And the facts are there are some women that don't make it out alive out of some of those
yeah.
scenarios, and that is
Oh,
the unfortunate truth.
the policemen that came to my house that day were like, if you don't leave right now, I cannot guarantee your safety. And
Wow.
that's all he had to say. Because I was so, you don't feel like you're like, no, that's not, no, that's
Mhm.
no,
It's
that happens
conditioning.
in the movies,
It's
right? It happens
conditioning.
in the movies.
Yeah.
I know I can, or like you go into this people pleaser thing. No, I feel like if I
Hmm.
change it, or if I don't say this thing, or that's just you walking on eggshells because your nervous system was primed for chaos.
Right.
And I'm so sorry that you've been thinking that for so long. Like, the Neeta back then was highly insecure. She didn't know who she was.
Right.
She had lost herself. She was not
Yes.
confident at all.
Hmm.
She was looking at all of the Little Mermaid and the Cinderella movies and all of those movies, thinking that somebody was going to save her. No one is coming to save you
No.
at all.
No.
You have to be able to advocate for yourself. And
Yourself. Hmm.
that's the biggest thing. And I think, I am now so grateful for that person. And I've shared this on my own podcast. I've shared this on solo cast. I've shared this on stages. People are like, "Are you?" And I'm like, "I have forgiven this human because I know hurt people hurt people." And I
Yes.
know for a fact he was, still is hurting. I don't know. But there is no, and of course it takes two people to have that energy,
Right.
and I know that I was not, like, I was not the person who I am today.
Right.
And even in just the little bits of me gaining confidence, thank God for my girlfriends, because in the first few weeks while I was sleeping on other people's couches,
Right.
because I didn't have a place to go. And
Right.
I had all of this shame that, like, I'm driving my BMW, going
Hmm.
into work, pretending like everything's okay when
Hmm.
I'm actually bawling my eyes out. But then I have to show up to patients. I was a cosmetic dentist in my own practice with my name on my door.
Yes.
But I was so afraid to tell people in my office the truth, that I was going through this very fearful situation.
Hmm.
I didn't know who was going to be coming through the doors, that I didn't feel safe. And there was a whole, it's also in my book and I share this, but there was a whole part where I had to let go of my ego and say, "Hey guys, I'm going through this really crazy divorce right now, and I don't know what's going to happen, and I can't guarantee that I'm going to be okay throughout all of this." And
Right.
again, this like visceral, dry heaving, it was like locked for, I don't know, 15 years, and
Oh,
it
yes.
just was pouring out because
Hmm.
when your nervous system is like, I can't, you cannot hold this anymore. You cannot suppress it. It had nowhere to go.
Right.
And oh my God, the very thing that I was so afraid of, being judged, being, people were going to leave me because, again, my core abandonment wound was coming up. And I'm like, I might not have anybody working for me. And I had 4 doctors, I had 2 hygienists, I had, a team of 8, from assistants to front desk people, etc. And I remember that day so vividly, and they're like, "No, we got you." There were a few people that actually quit, and that was fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like, no, people were like, I've got you. Don't worry, take all the time that you need. Stay at my house. Oh, this happened to my sister. Oh, this happened to my mom. Yes, we do. And it became a village. The thing that I was so ashamed of became the thing
Mm-hmm.
that was moving me forward, and that
Mm-hmm.
became my dharma, my North Star.
Yes.
So the fact that whoever's watching this perhaps landed on this, is listening to this right now, this is the very sign that you are at the right place, and this is exactly what you needed to hear
Mm-hmm.
right now, because I feel like the things that we're so ashamed of, when we normalize it and when we say it out loud, when we give it a voice, when we give it recognition, space to come up in the air, then
Yes.
it's like, whew, we let it go.
Yes. And I don't know what
And
it is with women especially, but we carry so much guilt. We carry so much shame. We're so beyond hard on ourselves, right? And I think just by nature, women are very much like that. And the thing that I pick up from your personal journey that I've had in my personal journey is I look back at the woman that I was in my marriage and I don't recognize her anymore, but I'm thankful that I was her at one time in my life, because you wouldn't be where you are now if it weren't for the old Neeta. And I definitely would not be where I am today if I did not go through what I went through. And that's the most amazing thing about life that's so beautiful to me is we have a choice. We have a chance to make things bright and beautiful out of the darkness.
oh, 1000%. 1000%. And I think you have to be open and ready for that, because
Yes.
I can see, on the other hand, and I have a lot of, girlfriends now who are also either going through divorce or passing through a divorce or been through a divorce. And, they get stuck, which is why I wrote the book, That Suck Now What? They get
Yes.
stuck in their suck. They get
Yeah.
stuck in their story,
Mm-hmm.
and they get stuck in the, either
Victim.
he cheated on me, or it's
Mm-hmm.
like in that victim mode.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes their story for a while. And I
Yes.
remember, a really dear guy friend, he said, so I know all these really crazy things happened to you, but when are you going to let that go? And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh my gosh. And he's known me since like high school. And I mean, and that was such a trigger, because it was like, wait a minute, but don't you understand?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And at that point, I didn't realize the big power of forgiveness, and the
Yes.
big power and the release that forgiveness has. I don't even think I was ready at that point. At this point, it was too new. But I write about it in the book, because some people, and the closest people to you, will trigger you in the best ways,
Mm-hmm.
because it only is that mirror of, okay, are you ready to receive this medicine? Are you ready to receive this download?
Yes.
And it's not yours to carry anymore. Like, for a certain time, maybe it had its purpose, it had its time. And I think, in my specific situation, I created a whole nonprofit to support, thousands of women and girls in all over college campuses, to speak their truth and to
Yes.
have more confidence, especially when they're dating, the partners they're picking. How I created a whole I love my selfie movement.
Mm-hmm.
It was like over a decade ago. So all of those things served. And then when I was done with that chapter, to let it go,
Mm-hmm.
I just passed it on. And then,
Yes.
and that's when I realized, okay, that chapter is completely done. And so for anybody who feels like they're in the thick of it,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's okay. Like, in my book, I call it the pity party of one. Have the pity party of one.
Yes.
Have your, like, oh gosh, that really happened to you. Yes, be that victim for the day, for a week, for a month,
Mm-hmm.
but let it have a chapter. Let it close up.
Yes.
That is not going to be your story forever.
Yes.
And that's not who you're going to attract next if you decide to open yourself up to dating, or even to date yourself, because that the person you're elevating to, you're becoming her right now.
Yes.
And who is she becoming in
Yes.
in these next few days, weeks, months, years?
Mm-hmm.
I remember my my lawyer in all of this, my divorce lawyer. She she was a daughter, her dad had been doing this for a really long time, and she's
Right.
like, Neeta, I'm just coming into it, she's coming into the family practice. And she's like, but I know in 5 years, this is going to be a splinter. This
Yeah.
is going to be a splinter in your journey, and I promise it. And I was like, what does this girl know? She's just joining her dad's practice. Like, she doesn't know. And those words stuck with me. And I kid you not, when I had my first son, she wrote me and she's like, do you remember the words that I shared with you?
Hey Xyz, it's your girl Lauren, and I just am here to say I appreciate all the love and support. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe so that the podcast can provide you with more valuable and meaningful work to support you on your journey.